Hey, thank you very much for showing up this early this morning. My name is Wojciech Wojtyniak. That's not a YubiKey string. This is my real name. And I'm a production engineer at Facebook. I work in security, and today I'm going to build up a little bit on the Corey's code talk yesterday about how SRE and security can work together. And I want to talk to you how actually SRE can work in security, and why this is beneficial for the both sides, and why this might be an interesting pursuit for all of you. So I'm with Facebook for over 4 years now, almost 4.5, and for most of that time, but for a few months, I was with the security team. And when I was starting, it was only 4 of us, and now we're much bigger. We are in 2 locations, have many sub-teams. We're on 2 continents. So I think this model is working out for us, and this is why I think it's valuable to speak about it. And we work with stuff like detection, authentication, and authorization, public certificates, and so on. And I know this is 2018, and I was really thinking hard whether I should include those slides. Like, should we ask ourselves why security is important? And the landscape changed great in the last few years. And I think everyone in this auditorium will agree, yes, security is important in something worth our time. But I still want to remind us that security is an ever-changing landscape. And now, more than ever, it's a good time for SREs to jump in and work in that space. So, first of all, it's not about the corp anymore. When I speak about corp, I mean corporate network, so your laptops, your mobile phones connected to your Wi-Fi network, printers, IoT devices, everything. And the classic model of security in many organizations was that security team was working with corporate network, defending the workstations of users, and there was maybe other product security team that was working with what the company, what the organization was delivering outside. This is not the case anymore, because when somebody is after you, you more care about the production network where your databases live. And it's really important for us to defend that, because everyone here, I believe, cares a lot about data of their customers, their organization, about people who entrust you with what's important to them. And this goes even further. As you most likely use some cloud services, some third-party things, your prod network might be actually the internet. Because are you sure that your firewalls are set up correctly? Do you know how authorization works? So this is getting more and more complicated. And with that, there come new challenges. I'm personally a huge fan of continuous release model. We can push nowadays 12 times a day to production. This is great. But the old model where product security team could review every release, this is not working anymore. It's impossible to do this the old way. And with the cloud, I mentioned a few seconds ago, we need more things to be concerned about. So this calls for something new. But is this really job for SREs? And by the way, I'm production engineer, and when I say SRE, when I say PE, I use those terms interchangeably. In production engineering, we like to say that we are a little bit less OPSI, we code a little bit more. But for this presentation, they're the same. I'm one of you. And I really believe this is a job for us, that we can get involved in security and that this model is working. Yes, I believe in that. And to tell you why, I want to tell you about the hardest part of my job, about the thing that I still haven't mastered, and I'm afraid I will never master. Explaining my friends and family, what do I really do at work? You know, when my parents ask me what do, I usually tell them about, okay, we run computers, we have software, there are CPUs, network devices, hard drives, there's some services at the end, some customer applications, some web services, everything that. And when I tell them this, they usually ask me, okay, so why are you a production engineer? Why are you not a software engineer? Why are you not a programmer? And this is a very fair question, because in my opinion, the border between the two of us is more and more fuzzy. However, I came up with a simplification, and as every simplification is imperfect, and you might argue that it's incorrect, but I like it very much. I tell people that we differ in focus. Me, as production engineer, as an SRE, I like to think about the whole stack, from the bottom to up and the other way. I understand how things are interconnected and how to keep them all together. And this goes not only for hardware stack, but even more importantly, for the software stack we have in the company or with the third parties we're using. And this is very important, in my opinion, for security, because security is a property of a system, not a single part. You know, even if you have one part of the system perfectly secured, if the rest of the system is insecure, is easy to be breached, you cannot consider that system or even that part secure. And the other way, if the whole system is secure but for one part, you can be in a better spot. And it's main strength of our teams, of all of us, to actually work with this whole stack. I spent a lot of time looking at how things are connected, how they're dependent on each other, and then down the road, I can leverage this knowledge to understand how things are, how to secure things, and how to help other people secure things. And believe me, supporting security as SRE is not that different than supporting any other team. There are SRE teams that are specialized in cache, databases, running front-end servers, and so on. And so there's a team that can work with security. In many areas, we are quite similar, and I will show you how exactly similar we are. And I don't believe we can speak about reliability without security. If your service has 100% uptime and you can roll out new version without taking it down and you never release any bugs to production, yes, you're quite reliable. But if you have security vulnerabilities in your service, if it can be taken down or breached quite easily, can you really speak about reliability? I personally don't think so. And please be mindful of the fact that every time you engage with somebody, we're bringing quite a lot to the table. And this cannot be undervalued. We all know how to automatize things, how to monitor and alert, how to handle disaster recovery. And you know what? Those are things that security really needs a lot. Think about vulnerability management. If there's a new 0-day released, you might want to launch new version, to push new version to production of some open source software as soon as possible. This is strength of us, and this is something we can help other teams with. Same goes with disaster recovery. Having to take down a service because it was breached is not that different from having to take something down because machines or a third-party service has failed. We know how to do that, and we can help with that. Thus saying, I hope I convinced you a little bit that this is job for us. And let me tell you a few words about how my team is doing that and what kinds of engagement we found really beneficial and how we do that. And by no means this is an exhaustive list. Like, you can do other stuff, and you don't have to do everything we do. So, first of all, running security services. This is how my team started many years ago. Services like LDAP, Kerberos, or even SSH needed some stronger owner, some, as I like to say, more love from some SREs. And we were created to manage that. And we do this. And this is not that different from running any other service you might have. And I bet you already have some kind of that in your network. You have SSH or some remote desktop protocol already. You have some kind of authentication platform. You keep a list of your engineers somewhere so they can log into your systems. And then you just need to come in and make them reliable. Make sure that if somebody needs to do their job, every tool they need is there. When we covered that, we started looking for what is missing or what can be improved. It might be there, but might need, as I said, more love. And you might find blind spots that you never thought about, like are you able to provide end-to-end encryption for services within your organization? Is your authorization and authentication stack flexible enough to cover every single use case? And so on. And I know some people like only focusing on running services, but we all in this room can code, I believe. And some of us don't like this. I personally I don't mind coding. And part of the model we found out that was really working well for us is that we coded some of these services as well ourselves. Excuse me. Sorry for that. We coded them ourselves. And we ran them as long as we had capacity to do this. And then we paired up with software engineering teams. At Facebook, we call them Swiss. So they own the code from now. And when you build stuff like that, usually the hard part is not figuring out the most optimal algorithms, finding the big O complexity, so what many software engineers like so much, but actually figuring out how to do this in a secure way. You don't need to be a star coder to cover this. And when you have those services built, you can go out and consult. And this is, I believe, something most of us do. If we build something or run something, we want to find people to use it, right? And then you can go out and engage with other teams and say, hey, we have pretty nice service. It might solve some of your problems, or it can improve your security posture. Let me help you use it. And by doing that, we gather a lot of context about how things need to work, because maybe there's some need for new API, or maybe there is a load pattern we haven't thought about previously, you know. And by doing this, we can really engage with people and find out more missing parts and just do a better job. And managing dependencies. Security services in most organizations are among the first things that need to be up in case of disaster. If you need to bring something from scratch, security services most likely will be coming just after operating system. So you need to be really mindful about what depends on what. Nowadays, when my team is quite large and we partner with many other teams, one of the services we provide is that we consult with them about adding new dependencies to the stack and understanding how would that fix any disaster recovery we might need to perform. And if we cannot use some dependency, because they might actually depend on us and we don't want to end up with the circular dependency, we try to find out other possibilities. Is there anything else they can use for that? But I want you to be mindful of one thing, and this is something I learned on the job. I learned this hard way. There is no secret sauce. There's no magic security powder I can sprinkle on a code base and make it secure. It just doesn't work like that. And especially early in my security days, I was approached many times by people who asked me, hey, we have this great service that's going to production 2 hours from now. Please make it secure. In some cases, yes, it was possible to do, or it wasn't really necessary. But in some cases, I had to go the hard way and ask people to take a step back, go back to the drawing board, and actually rethink how they do. Because if they've designed to not have any authentication in place, you cannot slap authentication later on, most likely. And over the time, when you engage with people like that, they will start coming, and they will keep coming to you. And nowadays, I don't even have to reach out outside of my team, because more often than not, if somebody needs us, if somebody wants our help, they will reach out to us pretty early, because they know that down the road, they most likely would interact with one part of my team anyway. And so all that's great, and I think this is quite similar to how other SRE PE teams work. But security can be a little bit different. So, for example, you don't have clear metrics. I would love to have 5 nines of reliability, or 2 incidents per month, or 9.5 of reliability for Kerberos, or stuff like that. But I cannot have this because one security breach can be disastrous, and I need to design to have none, and if that's not possible, like not make them impactful or the organization or what I want to protect. And I want to share with you 3 simple thinking models that everyone can employ, even if they work in security or not, just to look further, just to understand how to approach security problems. And first of them is the CIA, not this one. This one. Confidentiality, availability, and integrity triad. And I know what some of you think. Oh, this looks just like CAP theorem. I will pick 2 and run away happy. Well, almost. You have to pick all 3 of them. Let's take a closer look. So confidentiality is pretty self-explaining. You want to make sure that when you exchange information with somebody, only you and them can read it. And if somebody else read it or tampered with it, you want to have integrity and know about that. So let's look at some example. Let's assume I want to send a message to my good friend Greg. And I write that message on a special paper. It has watermarks and some metal stripes inside and some thin threads, colorful, put there. So if somebody changes the paper, I would know that, and he would know that as well. And he knows my handwriting very well, so if somebody adds something, he would notice. So we have integrity covered. For confidentiality, we need to go hard way. We're putting this message in a safe. And we assume that only just 2 of us can access the safe without tampering with it. And if somebody tampers with it, we would notice. So we have 2 of those 3 covered, but then comes availability. And we don't really have that. Would I have a separate safe and separate stack of magic paper for every one of my friends? That's not scalable. This is not how people communicate in a daily life. So by going after availability, by something that should be close to our hearts, we actually need to drive design further and figure out better ways of communication in a way that we can have all 3 of them. So we don't compromise confidentiality, integrity, to have availability. Because yes, of course, we could put up the message on trees or poles or something, and just everybody could read it, and everybody could tamper with it, and because it would be in many locations, most likely we wouldn't notice, right? But that's not what we're going after. We want to have all 3 of them. And in my experience, going after those 3 is what drives the hardest problems in designing security systems, security infrastructure on my daily basis. And this model was created for information security theory. It can be very academic, but also, as I hope I've shown to you, it can be used in a real life. The next thing is understanding the threats, knowing what you're afraid of. Security shouldn't be done for the sake of security. You can stack many security layers and make things overcomplicated without any reason. And this is what I believe makes some people dislike a group of security engineers, because there are people going after that. Please never do this. Always take a step back and ask yourself 2 questions. First of all, what do I want to prevent from happening? And please be as detailed as possible while covering that. Really understand what you're afraid of. And when you understand that and you find that this is okay, this is like viable threat, this can really happen, and I'm afraid of that, ask yourself a second question. If that happens, would I have a bigger problems? You know, Yellowstone might erupt one day, but I haven't insured my car from Yellowstone eruption. If this happens, would my car have a bad day? Oh yeah, it might get destroyed, might get covered in ash. Many bad things can happen. But I would be having way worse day. I would have much bigger problems than my car. And by the way, insurance company probably wouldn't exist anymore. So to my best knowledge, I'm not insuring my car from Yellowstone eruption. I also don't spend my days worrying about that. Do I consider this a possibility that this will happen during my lifetime? Yes, but that's not something that's preventing me from living my life. And let me tell you a story. A Few months ago, I was approached by a group of engineers who were running some service in an environment that my team provided for them. And they were really worried about the security of the environment. You see, their service had access to very important secret, and they really wanted to protect that secret from ever leaking. And this is a very valid concern. But they didn't have any threats in mind, and they didn't really understand how the environment was working. And when we were talking, when we were discussing the problem, I was able to not only present to them that, yeah, there are not many threats you should be afraid of, and for the ones that I'm concerned about, we already have mitigation in place. And more than that, the security broker system that we are using was running in the same environment. So if that environment got breached, even if their service was protected, the security broker system might have been breached as well. So they would have bigger problem and the certificate would leak anyway. And last but not least, the defense in depth. As you might have read the description of my talk, I think in the first sentence I said that in the game of security, defenders have to get lucky every single time, but the attacker has to get lucky only once. And this used to be very true, but I think that this is turning around nowadays. Even if there's 0 day for one part of your system, you want to make sure that other parts will not be affected. Think about this like that. If your corporate network is breached and there is an attacker living and persisting in it, make sure they cannot make it to the prod network. If they are in the prod network, make sure they don't have a valid identity so they cannot access any service. If they have some kind of identity, make sure it can do only one thing and other parts of your prod infrastructure are still intact. Make their life living hell. Literally make sure that the amount of effort they need to put in to breach you to get to what they need is way bigger than what they can gain. And thus saying and understanding this, let me tell you about how to convince other engineers, other people that security is something worthwhile. I don't think this is a very pressing problem nowadays. People generally came to the conclusion that yes, security cannot be an afterthought. But if somebody has some doubts, you can use some cheat sheet for that. And what I'm going to present is not really different than getting help from people in any other area. So you can leverage this in any of SRE engagements. So first of all, make it simple. I think every of the successful releases that we done really quickly with my team was when enabling some security feature or some part of infrastructure was just a bit flip, or one line of code, or just configuration change. And it only worked when the thing we were pushing was stable and wasn't impacting services. Early in my career, I pushed some unstable things to production. People weren't happy and weren't willing to use it, even long time after I fixed the issues. And then make it cheap. It's a pet peeve for me when people approach and say, hey, I would love to do that, but I need to count those 12 CPU cycles every minute, or those 40 kilobytes of memory. I cannot afford that. And yes, in many cases, people are validly concerned about the resources that are being used. If service is CPU bound, people will not be really willing to add something that uses a lot of CPU to it. So when we're releasing something, I'm really striving to get it as cheap as possible. I like to say that things should be free until proven guilty. And over the years, when people were telling me, no, I cannot do that because I cannot afford using this, I always ask them to try. And if it's really too expensive, please come back to me with metrics. And using those metrics, we'll try to fix it and improve. And you know what? No one ever came back, and things are enabled in production till this day. And last but not least, be nice. Try to help people. I said before that you should reach out to people when you release something new and engage with them. And this gives you huge benefits, like better understanding of needs outside of your drawing board and real-life load patterns. But this should go further. Security is often said that we don't like to say yes. I personally strive to say yes. I sometimes cannot, but if I cannot say yes, I like to have counter offer on table. And with that counter offer, with another solution, I try to explain to people why I believe this is what we should go for. Why we shouldn't do the easy thing, but we should take the harder path and actually get better results in the end. And more often than not, people are very willing to do this because they understand, okay, I might not have full picture of the problem, and somebody gives me solution that's already taken care of and that's already battle tested. I hope I convinced you that security is quite interesting for SREs. And you might wonder, okay, I don't have any security background. Can I do this? Or we cannot afford to have separate security teams, so this is not for us. And both are not true. I personally have only academic experience with security before starting in my team. I learned on the job. I paired up with great security engineers who basically taught me how to think. And I shared the most fundamental things here with you. So you have that. And you don't really need to start separate team. We at Facebook did because there was a need for that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be true for your organization. You can do other things. And for many of them, you don't need to have any more context than you already have. Let's take a look at them. Those are first steps I suggest. This is not like foolproof method, and you can do less or you can do more, but I always find them useful to begin with. So first of all, learn what you have in your infrastructure. If you talk with security folks in the community, more often than not, they will say that the biggest problem of organization is that they don't know what they're running. And this is not only printers connected to their Ethernet network anymore. It's their prod network as well. They don't know how many machines they have, what those machines do, how they are provisioned. But I believe, since we're all here interested in SRE, we already have a lot of that covered. We know how things are provisioned, and we can start or already do some accounting of them. When we know what's running out there, we can start looking at versions. Maybe we haven't updated operating system in 3 years. Maybe we never installed some security patches. And that would be the first steps. Just do the solid SRE work and understand what's going on there. And then look how we provide secrets to those machines. Because there's no really point of knowing what's running out there if somebody can start something new and take your data from you. So then comes authentication and authorization. How do you know that engineer is whom he claims to be or whom she claims to be? How do you know that service is what it claims to be? How does it work? Look at this and roll something out. It might be Kerberos, it might be something custom. Try to figure that out. And when you have this in place, you can start worrying about access. And I think that most organizations nowadays are very good at providing access. People start in the company and they get the new laptop and access on their first day. This is awesome. This didn't happen to me in some places. But are you as good at unprovisioning people, at taking away access when they switch teams, when they quit the company sometimes even? Can you provide access only for a given period of time? This is really a good place to look, and it's something that you can do regardless of everything else. And last but not least, look at secret management. I name this especially because I'm tired of hearing stories about people keeping secret keys on internal wikis or having plaintext folders to exchange passwords. Please don't do that. Look about how you keep secrets and make sure that in rest they're encrypted. Make sure you have some ACLs on them and that you can prevent unauthorized access. And then make sure that they're actually replicated and backed up. And please test those backups. Okay, this is all I had for you today. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer questions now, and I will be hanging around Facebook booth or around the conference for the rest of the day. So if you have any questions or want to discuss something, please feel free to approach me. I'm super happy to talk with you. Thanks.